Hey y'all, I'm Allison Asarch from Nashville, Tennessee.
Hey, I'm Sean Fraser from the Ritzy Kids.
Hunters, this is Johnny from Rail Motor.
Hey, it's Shane from Blind Season.
Hey, it's Rob Stanier, and you can check out my music on all the streaming platforms.
Check out my latest music on all the streaming sites.
Check out my debut album on all streaming platforms.
Check out our new debut album.
Check us out on Spotify and Apple Music. And you're listening to our friends, Braggy and Curly.
My favorite bands from Australia.
My two favourite podcasters,
Braggy and Curly.
Braggy and Curly.
On the
Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome to episode 122 of the Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast. We've got an amazing show ready tonight. We're going to talk something a little different. We don't have a band, we don't have music, but we're going to talk about the finished product. But before we do that, before I introduce our very special guest from Suitcase Records, we have got Braggy in Adelaide. How are you tonight, Braggy?
I am awesome tonight. It's gone cold again here, but it's okay.
And you may notice the Queenslanders, as you already have, are in T-shirts. And we've got Rossi in Sydney. How are you, mate?
Home of the unseasonably warm. I got in the car yesterday. It was 39.
Oh, no.
Jesus.
Wow. That's hot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They ran the marathon there on Sunday. And
it was smoky too.
There's a lot to be said about running in unseasonably warm conditions. So, but a great marathon. Well done, Sydney. I'm going to put my thumbs up. They did a great job. And let's introduce, we have got Kathy and Neil from a vinyl record producing, manufacturing business here in Brisbane called Suitcase Records. Welcome to the show, Kathy and Neil.
Thanks very much.
All right. As I've said, I don't really know how we're going to go tonight, but I'm going to start anyway. What got you into the record making business?
Take it.
Well,
It was him, actually.
when you have your midlife crisis, you've got a choice. You can either buy a red Porsche or you can start a record pressing business. And I worked out that everyone always gets the red Porsche. So
Good choice, Neil. You
Exactly.
made a good choice.
Look, I sort of hit a point in my life where I started to look around for a bit of a change. I wasn't really loving what I was doing. And I'm an architect by background. I've been working in sort of big construction firms for a lot of years and doing sort of project design management. Sort of had just started to think, what's something new? And came across a couple of articles about how there was such a massive demand for vinyl worldwide, for vinyl manufacturing. And kind of didn't really think anything of it because I thought, well, what's that got to do with me? But it sort of just stuck in my head somewhere. And then not long after that, I saw another article about a couple of people who started up a plant in the US with a new automatic machine. And both these people didn't have a manufacturing background, didn't have a background in the music industry. And that's when I kind of went, oh, okay. And just started doing a bit of research, got in touch with the people who made that machine and sort of then just sort of gently said to Kath, what do you think about starting a record press business? And she kind of went, yeah, sure, whatever.
Whatever, love, that's fine.
And I like the terminology, gently said to.
Exactly. And then, I don't know, like 3 or 4 weeks later, I came back and said, well, what do you think about these figures? And she went, oh, you're serious?
At which point I thought I should probably start paying attention.
Yeah.
Or was it more so, you're serious?
Yes, very
No,
good.
in her defense, it wasn't.
Are you-
It was,
Are you the figures
actually
person,
very
Kathy?
positive.
Are you
What was
the are you the figures person?
No,
Like-
I am
Oh,
absolutely
you're not. Okay.
No. My background is I have corporate communications background. I was working very happily in a job that I love, doing corporate communications for big companies like Expedia and Travelocity. But sometimes you just got to go for it. So we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we sold the family home. We said, okay, well, we're going to do it with some cash. And so I said to the kids, right, house is going. And then
Grown children at this point. They're not 3.
they're all
You're
for home.
going to inherit
And
a
your
record
toys
plant.
are gone too. The toys are gone.
There's $100 for Saturday's accommodation pages. Off you go. Anyway, yeah. So we just thought, what the hell? Roll the dice and let's have a crack.
Yeah.
And it's that classic thing of, you know, you need a bit of naivety to do this stuff. You know, we did a lot of research, and we kind of, you know, we weren't, we didn't go in, you know, we didn't go in naively. We did a lot of work, a lot of research. But, you know, if we knew then what we know now, would we do it? Don't know. But we're really glad that we have. And, you know, it's just one of those things where you hit hurdles and you come across things and you deal with them and you keep going. But, yeah, I think
one of the best things that happened for our business was that we didn't give ourselves an exit strategy. not on purpose. But because we had because we had no exit strategy, it's
a great motivator.
Yeah. Well, what do you do, right? So you hit a problem. You know, if somebody had come along and offered us 20 cents, there were a few times along the way that we absolutely would have taken it, but nobody did. So we just solved the problems and kept moving. And here we are. Exactly a year later.
Self-doubt will take you out every time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And look, you know, we were both, I mean, especially me, but Kath as well, were both pretty big music fans. We used to have, you know, gigs in our backyard, and we were, you know, I was fairly heavily involved for a lot of years with, you know, volunteering up at the Woodford Festival and sort of, you know, so I've always had an affinity for music. I can't play music to save myself. I know 3 chords and I know them badly, you know, but, yeah, you know, so, but, you know, but we wanted to do something around that because, you know, I've always tried to do something sort of fairly creative in my life. And I think I'd gotten to the point where I'd gotten away from that creativity. This is a different form of creativity, but it's still really creative, both in what we do and the people we work with. So you know, it's great. You know, it's like anything. You know, you have hard days, but geez, we have some great days, and it's often the little, you know, artists that you've just never heard of, that we haven't heard of. Something will come through the door, and you're checking the test press, and you're just like, wow, what's this? You know, like, and yeah, those sorts of moments are pretty special.
So it's like the industry, like we often have discussions about the state of the music industry, about streaming versus physical media. What's the best option? Obviously, I have no doubt that you two have done your research about, you know, the trends across, you know, CDs versus 7-inch vinyl, 10-inch, 12-inch. What do you see? Like, that's what I'd be really interested to know. What have you guys? What's your learned experience, I guess?
Well, I can talk about part of that, and Kath's got some good insights on that as well. I mean, in short, and I think everyone knows, so vinyl's very much on the ascendancy. It's probably, you know, the massive rush of the, you know, sort of mid 2015, 16, 17, it's starting to maybe peter off a little bit, but still very much growing. Outstrips CDs now by quite a bit. So it's the number one selling physical medium. We do get a fair bit of, we get requests for 7-inch. At this stage, we're not looking at doing them because we get some requests. We don't get a lot of requests. And the reality these days is the cost for us to make 7 inches means that what we would need to charge people is just silly. And we don't want to do something if we can't sort of, you know, charge a reasonable rate. There's established plants around the place they've got existing machinery that doesn't owe them anything, so they can do it, you know, pretty economically, and we can't.
Zenith, for example.
Yeah, and programming can do it as well, and there's obviously lots of options overseas. And if you're shipping 7 inches, it's a bit cheaper than shipping 12 inches. You know, streaming is an interesting one. Actually, you're a better place to talk about that.
So one of the things I love, I'm sort of on the front line because you know, it's mostly Neil and I. We've got a production person out in the back, and there's a production assistant as well. So we're really lean. So as a result, I consistently get to talk to people right at the front, you know, people who are looking to press right at the beginning of their journey. And I hear over and over again, people just want to make money out of their music. They just want to make a living out of their music. So I don't know if this exactly answers your question, but what I know is that there's a huge yearning for merch that people can be proud of and that can help them connect with their fans and can help build their career. And, you know, I'm probably a little bit biased, but I reckon vinyl is the best merch you can do. And I see it over and over again. It's even in the last, so we've been at it for a year. In the last maybe 3 or 4 months, people are really getting with the program and realizing, okay, I'm a musician. Streaming is great for lots of things, but it's not that brilliant for putting food on the table. So what are the other options we can do to solve that problem? And people are coming to us.
It's interesting the comment about merch, because in my young years, I grew up with vinyl, and then obviously everything's CD, but I've never seen vinyl as merch. To me, it's music. But I think what's happened is that when vinyl started to take off again, it was kind of seen as merch because it was seen as being a bit, kind of niche and so
boutique sort of.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we are starting to see a bit of a change in the way people kind of think about vinyl and merch. And I'd like us to get back to that point where vinyl's not merch. Merch is your hat, your T-shirt, your stubby cooler, your teapot, whatever. Vinyl is music.
Yeah.
Income.
Yeah.
The streaming stuff is kind of almost a lost leader, That like you put yourself in the shop window and see if you can get people to come to shows, because the money's in shows and the money at shows is in merch. Yeah. Selling T-shirts is where people make money. Selling vinyl or whatever they can sell at shows is where the money is, and that's not just for small acts. That's big acts.
No, it's massive. All the big acts they make all the big acts from touring, don't they? Most of them, unless you're freaking Beyonce or someone.
And that awful trend of businesses, of venues trying to hit a stipend of like 20 to 30% on the merch sales as well is a pretty ugly trend that's emerging.
It's a real problem.
Yeah, it is.
So Braggy, let me ask you this. When Blow Up Sweethearts recorded their album on Magnetic Island, and you were adamant the music was going out as a vinyl.
I was a massive fan of vinyl, and I just, obviously I started playing in bands when I was young, original bands when I was, 16, 17, 18, and was just vinyl. And my whole dream for my whole life was to, I had the dream that every muso has to be famous and make it. And when I realized that's never going to happen, I thought, well, at least I could make a record, just so I can have my record in my collection or up on my wall, So I really, really wanted to do that. So that's why I did it. And I really wanted to do it to the last one we did with Rail Motor, but we didn't, but we're definitely going to do it for this next one. So that's the main thing. It's interesting, the 7-inch thing you guys are talking about. I can see why it probably, when we talk to other artists at the moment about whether you're going to release single after single after single on Spotify, or you're going to make a whole album, a lot of them are going for that EP sort of style. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if that will be in the future a market.
Yeah, I don't know. An EP, the term sort of changed meaning a bit. People sort of seem to refer now to an EP as just something that's got 3 tracks aside, as opposed to, a lot of EPs used to actually be 10-inch, but so don't know. I think 7-inch might. There's not a massive market for it at the moment. There are in particular kind of genres and subcultures of music. But generally it's not a massive market. So it's kind of, it's hard for newer suppliers to sort of come and do it reasonably, it's just, it's just the cost to produce it at this stage is too much. But, as vinyl continues to grow, that industry-wide, just helps to bring the prices down. We get better access to, if there's more printers printing, we can get better prices. If there's more people producing stampers, you can get better prices. I think that all starts to kind of level that out as well.
Yeah. Now, Braggy, the timer went off. Okay. So it's part 1.
Now, last week I got in trouble.
I
got in trouble from some of our younger guests and from Rossi because I didn't do anything from every person I think was from last century. So I've changed this time.
And I won't know who it is.
I was born in 1847.
There are 176 for those playing at home.
The previous century.
Yeah. I was born in 1847 in Milan, Ohio, but grew up in Port Huron, Michigan after my family moved there in 1854. I was taught reading, writing, and arithmetic by my mother, who was a school teacher. I was a curious child who learnt most things by reading on my own. I became fascinated by technology and would spend hours conducting and working on experiments at home. At age 12, I developed hearing problems, probably caused by a bout of scarlet fever, which eventually left me with poor hearing in one ear and completely deaf in the other. I was fond of music and would listen to the piano by clamping my teeth into the wood to absorb the sound waves into my skull.
You've outdone yourself.
That's brilliant, mate.
Any idea?
I got a bit of a clue.
Okay, cool. Rossi always got a clue.
I have zero idea. So,
Okay.
all right.
It's very.
So
I've got an idea, but it could be completely the wrong idea. So.
Okay. No worries. Well, we'll have to wait for next one.
So Neil, I'm going to direct this one to you, and you need to do like a dummy's guide to making a vinyl record. What does it look like? Because that's fascinating for us vinyl fans who love putting it on. But how is a vinyl record made?
Look, with Eye of Newt and batsmen and that sort of stuff, it kind of feels like
Essence of terror, sinister source.
It's witchcraft. It's pure witchcraft. It's interesting because the technology now, so the machine we use to make records is fully automated. We can use it manually as well, but fully automated, computer driven. It's got CPUs and servo motors, and we can program that thing into it, an inch of its life. But at the end of the day, when you make a record, you get soft plastic and you squish it between two plates that have got grooves in it under heat and pressure, and you go, and you get a record. So, it's a really weird thing in that you're dealing with something that these days there's a lot of high tech, but it's still very much an analog thing. But look, in short, if I describe our process, so we'll get an artist audio. We get a lacquer cut, which is basically an aluminium disc with a special acetate lacquer on it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lacquer cutter will literally cut a side of a record into that. You could take that away and play it. They won't last, after one or two plays, it's basically degraded. But you take that lacquer and and this is where the real witchcraft happens. Actually, the first bit of witchcraft happens in the cutting of the lacquer, because the thing to understand about a record is that the lacquer now has the grooves, which will be replicated in a record. Those grooves, when you look at a record, look all beautiful and smooth and round and uniform. But if you look at that under a microscope, it's like this wiggly kind of thing that goes along. And it's a three-dimensional physical thing. It's a groove. It's within that groove, there are ridges and nodules and bumps and holes and all that sort of stuff. And in short, what happens is that the needle on your record player bounces along in that. And that movement, that needle then passes back through magnets in the head of the record player. That current creates, sort of an electromagnetic current, which is effectively, a version of a sound wave. That goes back to your amplifier. Your amplifier converts that into sound waves that then come out. So
magic.
Yeah,
magic.
And
to make a great sounding record, there's so many parts.
Variables.
So many variables. Obviously,
I love that you say that, because not a lot of people know that.
The quality. Obviously, you start with the quality of your microphone you sing into, or the quality of your guitar, or whatever it does.
Yep.
And then it's the sound guy, and then it's all this and this. But is there anything that you guys can do with the quality of the vinyl that will make it better than another piece of vinyl?
Yes and no. Look, there's sort of a rule of thumb in the industry that, if you start from the point of having a good master, it's about 50% lacquer cut, 30% stampers, 20% pressing. And, what that's effectively saying is that your audio is the most important. Getting the audio onto the lacquer is then the most important. Getting a decent stamper that replicates that. So by the time it comes to us, we can press the best record on the world, but if we're dealing with a bad cut or a bad stamper, we're going to produce a bad record. So, look, it used to be that everyone said, black vinyl is the best and colours, noisier or more surface noise or just not quite as good. I think those days have changed. Modern compounds now, apart from having less, sort of really nasty chemicals in them. I mean, there's still, that's the elephant in the room is we're still dealing in plastic.
Right.
But, you know, the modern compounds now, it's all exactly the same base compound. The only thing that changes between black, pink, yellow, clear is the pigment. Now, so what we've found through our experience and also as listeners is that if you've got a well-pressed record, you know, and someone puts a blindfold on you, you will not pick the difference between a black and a coloured record.
Mm-hmm.
But if you mix your colour, then things start to happen. So,
is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
so if you marbles or splatters, those sorts of things, because what's happening is that the pigment in the compounds affect the way in which that compound heats, you know, where's the melt point. You're not talking a big percentage, but, you know, like we typically run, you know, we run black at 153 degrees for our extruder. We'll run clear at 149. So you mix those two. One of them slightly hot, one of them slightly cool. When they blend, you can get points where those two compounds or the two pigments have met, where you'll get surface noise. Now, you shouldn't get
variance.
Yeah, you shouldn't get pops or clicks or that sort of thing because that's a pressing issue or it's a problem with the stamper. But you could get surface noise. And interestingly, some people, when we talk to about that, they're like, well, that's just vinyl. But other people, obviously, if they're really kind of particular about it, then we'll push them back towards where you want to go a single color. If that audio, you know, quality is really important to you, you know, you want to go back to a single color. But, you know, it's also horses for courses, you know, like, you know, there's some bands we press. Well, we just pressed a double album today for a young band off the coast, the Gold Coast, called Peach Fur. And, you know, they're really into their artwork. They're a great young band. Well, actually, I was going to compare them to another band, but I probably won't because you know, I'll offend someone.
Very hard to offend us.
Still young guys. And it's a part of what they're trying to do. Like, it's not just the music for them. They've got great artwork. You know, the AB side. Well, the first album AB is like a dark, transparent blue with black and white marbled through it. And then the C and D, you know, second album is like a fluoro green with white and black marble through it. And when you mix that into fluoro green, it actually soft. It's not really fluoro anymore. It's like this nice sort of deeper green. Yeah, and that's a part of what they're trying to do. And the reality is that the albums still sound great. You probably got to have really good gear and know what you're listening for to actually pick it up. Splatters, different story, look great. That's basically when we take a puck, we make a puck and we dip it into PVC beads, and that's the albums where you'll see the lines all radiate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They look fantastic, but they can sound pretty. You know, you will get a lot more surface noise in there.
Not always.
We've
done some good ones that have sounded great as well.
But, you know, if anyone's doing a splatter, I'm always like, you've got to accept that there'll be a reduced audio quality.
What about
They've got to take advice.
What about thickness of the vinyl?
You get asked that a lot.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. It's not a quality. It's not an audio quality issue. One isn't better than the other. It literally comes down to the 180 feels heavier in your hand. And,
feels nicer,
and that's not nothing. You know, that's not nothing at all. But it's a little bit more expensive, and it's just a different experience. Again, I think that's one of the things I like is that every single order is unique to that particular artist. And I would love to say, look, I can just tell you what a standard order is, but I haven't yet once out of 150 orders because somebody really cares about 180. Their dad would be disappointed if they didn't have 180. You know? It's really, vinyl is just so incredibly personal.
And interesting, you know, we've pressed for quite a few, you know, kind of DJs and hip hop acts now. And anything that's going near a deck, if that a DJ is using it, they want 140 because apparently 180 is too heavy to use on a deck if you want to, you know, basically
move it.
Mix.
So what I would be interested to know is, like, what's the average for your average customer? What size run do they do? And secondly, do you guys do that old style vinyl trick where they scratch an inscription into the runoff on the end?
Oh,
so I've always loved that. I've got some rippers I've seen, and they make
me too. I love that too.
Yeah, I love that.
if someone wants an inscription, we'll do it. We don't scratch anything in, mainly because it feels a bit we're not there, it feels a bit arrogant to me. It's like,
Fair enough.
who am I to do that? Interesting though, lacquer cutters are a very proud lot, and every lacquer cutter always scratches their name into the lacquer. So typically, if you look at a record and look at it, around the between the label and the run-out groove, you're going to see the matrix, the catalog number.
Yep.
Yeah.
And typically, you will see who cut the lacquer, and then beyond that, sometimes you might see who mastered it. And then there's the pressings where the lacquer cutter's written some obscure, sort of inscription in there.
I've had bands who would record a lyric in that runoff. That's pretty fun.
Yeah. And you can do stuff even like you can do like a one-sided album. The other side's an actual piece of artwork. You can sort of etch into.
I've seen that too.
Yeah, I've got a three-sided double album, and the fourth side is that.
And so, what size runs do people generally come to you guys for?
Our smallest run that we do is 100.
Yeah.
And the biggest we've done was G Flip, which was 7,500.
Hey, that's a big run.
Yeah,
that's a big run.
Yeah,
wow,
that's great.
And that was great. Yeah, that was really fun project. So in terms of sheer quantity,
well, actually, I worked out some stats the other day. Actually, 65% of our jobs by job number are basically 250 or less.
Yep.
But 25% of our volume is 250 or less. So obviously you run a whole bunch of G Flip. It's a hell of a lot of little jobs to equal out that.
Sure.
Yeah. So we've done 100, 200, 500, 700, 1,000, 2,000.
So your sweet spots around that 250 point.
I don't know about a sweet spot.
It's probably not the sweet spot for profitability, Neil, is it?
Yeah.
So, but
look, the way to probably look at it is we started to do the little jobs. We started to do work for independents. The reality is, in any business, we need the big jobs to keep the lights on. That's what keeps us all working and everything ticking over. But the big jobs allow us to do the little jobs.
Yeah.
So if all we were doing was runs of 100 and 200, we would really struggle. And we actually struggle anyway. We might make some money in a couple of years. But those bigger jobs, give you the meat to keep the press running, and then we slot the little jobs in between. But a typical day for us is always 3 to 4 jobs as opposed to just one big job. If we got a big job, pump it out.
7.5K is spectacular.
That was
I wouldn't think like that's halfway towards an old gold record.
And look, their label is great, Future Classic. They've just done a great job. And interestingly, what we see, because we've pressed a number of albums now that have charted, and we've pressed at least 2 or 3 number ones, and a lot of sort of top 10s.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's really exciting. But what we
actually, just to sorry, you go. We've got to brag.
What we've noticed is that there's a big push to get an album out to chart it. Obviously, everyone wants their thing to chart, but often something an Australian album might hit number 1 or it might hit number 2 or 3 or whatever, and the next week it's number 30, and the week after it's lucky to be in the 100 because basically. You produce 1,000 records, bang, they're sold, and that's kind of it.
And that includes pre-sales as well.
Yeah. With G Flip, it's just kept on charting. So it's that I love seeing that because I'm, like my era when I used to always check out the charts when I was younger. It's like how long is that going to be at number 1? It's that long tail, whereas that's less of a thing at the moment.
So have you done second pressings?
Yeah, we have.
We actually done. I think we did one with the third.
Somebody's come back twice.
So actually, here's a story for you. The very first record we pressed for a band, for a client, is a Brisbane band called Girl and Girl, and great Brisbane band. They remind a little bit of early Talking Heads. Kind of
Oh yeah.
That punk kind of new way of feel to them.
Yep.
Anyway, so Big Sound was on last year. We went along. On the first day of Big Sound, I stepped out to basically race back to the factory to press this record. I think we did a run of 180 or 200 or something. And almost a year to the day, and at Big Sound this year,
Okay.
I jumped out to go and repress their album for them. So in Hot Pink this time.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, we've done a few. Like actually, Bad Dreams was one where we pressed. You know, we did a repressing of Bad Dreams only about 3 weeks after we, sent the first lot. And we've done a few now, and we've got a couple of labels as well where, we've got there's some great little labels that we've now done 3 or 4 jobs for in the course of the year.
It's fantastic.
Which is great because there's economies of scale for when when they come back for repress, we've got the stamps.
Yeah. All
I'm
right, so
very excited by this.
I need to interrupt because it's part 2 of Braggy's Who Am I?
Okay.
Of which I have no idea.
My first job was selling newspapers and candy on the trains running from Port Huron to Detroit. I was turning a $50 a week profit by the age of 13. At age 15, I saved a 3-year-old boy from being struck by a runaway train. The boy's father, the station master, was so grateful he trained me as a telegraph operator. My first telegraphy job was on the Grand Trunk Railway that operated between Canada and the US. I continued to conduct experiments in my spare time, becoming more interested in chemistry and physics. At age 19, I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where, as an employee of Western Union, I worked the Associated Press Bureau Newswire. I requested the night shift, which allowed me plenty of time to spend on my 2 favorite pastimes, reading and experimenting. Eventually, the latter preoccupation cost me my job. One night in 1867, I was working with a lead-acid battery when I spilt sulfuric acid onto the floor. It ran between the floorboards and onto the boss's desk below. The next morning, I was fired.
Can we take a stab yet?
No.
You got to wait till the end. I'm pretty sure you two guys know who it is, and I'm pretty sure Rossi's got it. Curly?
I have, Neil, I'm impressed. If you know that, I am impressed. So
okay.
Well, I haven't been thinking way too much, but I think there actually is a link between this person and us.
I think that's what I thought too. Yeah.
All right. So a couple of things that I just want to make mention is I've been lucky enough to have a tour of Suitcase Records and to understand the automation, and I know that dust is a big issue when it comes to producing your vinyl records.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I just want to talk about is that Kathy and Neil are both doing a compilation around some of the artists that they've actually produced records for, vinyls for the last year. So let's start with Neil and talk about dust in the record and then in the production of records, and then let's move to Kathy and hear about the Suitcase compilation, because that's the Suitcase showcase. That's it.
Great choice. I'm glad not to talk about dust.
Dust. Anybody?
Yeah, look, dust is not good. So we obviously our factory is sealed and air conditioned. We actually have HEPA filters built into the top of our record press. Each of the modules. HEPA filters are the same thing that you'll use in a surgery if you're getting your insides dealt with. And so it is. I mean, it's interestingly the melting of the PVC for just normal dust. Kind of alleviates the issue. If you get sort of bigger granules, that it's obviously an issue, but we keep everything really clean. Interesting. One of the things that dust is a real risk for us is when we press records, we're using a hydraulic press, and in that press are molds. Those molds during the pressing process are heated up to about 160 degrees and then cooled down to about 60 degrees. So they heat up to help melt and spread the PVC compound, cool to stabilize it. On those molds, we insert what's called stampers, and stampers, the easiest way to think about it is a stamper is the negative for your record. So every record we get a set of stampers made. Set of stampers will do up to, rule of thumb is around 1,000 records. We get a second set of stampers anytime a job's over 700. If you're doing 7,500 like G-Flip, I think we end up getting 9 sets of stampers for that job. Stampers go on top of the molds. The molds have been basically polished and smoothed to an optical level of finish and up, flat to within, an umpteenth. If when we're putting the stampers onto the molds, we get even the tiniest bit of dust in between the stamper and the mold, we're pressing at about 75 ton of pressure. That little piece of dust will press through the stamper and create a dimple in the record. Now, most dimples, you wouldn't know they're there, especially if you've got a coloured record. They're hard to see, but, they can then basically play and you'll get that, that heartbeat, that thump. So that's one of the things with dust we've got to be most careful about, is making sure. So we'll clean our molds beforehand with acetone. We've got dry compressed air. We blow them down. We clean the back of the stampers, and we've got a process where, you're blowing down the mold. You're having the stamper so that the surface that contacts the mold is facing down. You're blowing that at the last minute on, seal it up. And, and then when the first and second record come out, we've actually got a dentist lamp with a magnifying glass in the middle of it. And we get those records and we go over them. Are there any dimples? And if there are, at that point, we can stop, pull the stamper off, re-clean, back on, and get rid of that.
Did you know that, Braggy?
A little bit, yeah. I know, because when I got my record pressed, they sent me like things to just check first, to make sure I was kind of happy with it. So, but I have read a little bit, but I didn't really know that was that. You had to have freaking surgical stuff to. Wow.
Is that why the quality's improving? Is that why the quality's improving? Like digital starts to come into play a bit, so the waveforms you're getting are a little bit better formed, right? And so as we're going through the stages, is there I think from what I hear in vinyl, I reckon there's an improvement in quality than some of the older stuff I heard, say, in the early 80s.
Yeah, and look, the 80s, interestingly, the 80s and then into the 90s, I was reading somewhere recently, there was a bit of a downturn in quality because they were trying to make records cheaper. That was one of the things to keep people buying it. So records actually got thinner. So there's a lot of records from the 80s and 90s where it's probably closer to 110 grams. So they're getting pretty thin, and that can obviously cause issues. I think, look, it all, the technology is improving. The compounds are improving. The way in which stampers are made. Interestingly, cutting lacquers, no one's really developed a new lacquer cutter. Everyone talks about the best lacquer cutters are Neumann lathes. A Neumann lathe hasn't been made in 40 years. So, you're still using old equipment there. But I think it also comes down to, who's making your records. Are they taking care? Are they, following a decent process? Are they using good suppliers? All those sorts of things.
How many local guys can lathe cut a master for you?
So there's no one who does it commercially in Australia. Yeah. So Zenith do it in-house, but both Program and ourselves have to outsource that. And it's a bit of a hard one in that the cost to set up both the lacquer cutting and the stamper making is incredibly high. And especially with the stamper production, the smallest stamper production facility you could put in would make way in excess of what we need. So there's a bit of a, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, but at this stage, we're probably too small, but down the track, it's definitely something we would like to bring in house. But we need more volume to be able to do that.
Yeah, fascinating. So Braggy, next time you're on your way to Agnes Water, I'll need to grab you and we'll do a tour of Suitcase.
Oh, I'd love to,
because I know that you would love this sort of stuff.
I'm definitely, I would love that. I want to ask. This is probably for everybody. Would you rather listen to the vinyl that's been recorded digitally and then pressed onto vinyl, or recorded analog and then pressed onto vinyl? And could you tell the difference?
My ears, no.
Can of worms? Yeah, not your ears, Rossi. You're a roadie for 40 years.
I think sometimes those questions, I guess I'm not a purist, but I think sometimes those questions miss the point as to what your preference is and what are you doing it for. I think
Yeah.
that's,
And what's your style of music and what gear are you listening to it on?
Yeah,
all of that.
I just find, because sometimes I see I've got a really old record system. It's an old Yamaha, and I don't really go. Some of my mates have wrote those audiophile guys, and I just can't.
Yeah.
No offense to them, but it just seems a lot of bullshit to me. It makes me happy. It makes me happy. You know.
But it's going back to, like, even in the early days of web design, like you were dealing with 640 by 480 resolution, 1024 by 70. It's the end. What are people using at what's the consumer using at their end that dictates the quality of their experience, right?
Yeah. But I guess
part of it as well.
I guess for these guys though, they want to make a record
the best they can do,
the best they can be. So if a guy's playing it on his whatever $1 million system, it's going to have the best sound it can possibly have.
Yeah,
our goal is to produce a record that accurately represents the master that we've been given.
Yeah.
Is that measurable?
Sorry,
can you measure that?
You can actually. It's going down a bit of a tech rabbit hole. But our
thanks, Rossi.
I actually had a Zoom call last night with our stamper manufacturer who's over in the UK, and he's developed software where he can, because sometimes someone will say, "Oh, that doesn't sound like the lacquer I provided," or does that match the master? So he's actually got software now, so they can take a recording of the stamper. So they use a special, stylus to, record for the stamper. They can take a recording of the lacquer. They can take the recording from the test pressing, and they can take the original audio, and they can actually overlay that, and they can see what's going on. And what effectively they're trying to see is, because, especially if you've got a digital master, the vinyl, especially when you get into the higher frequencies, it's never going to be as detailed as that digital. But it should have a similar relationship, and so they can check
waveforms.
And you often can get a situation. Well, not often, but you can get a situation where if the lacquer hasn't been cut properly, you won't have that similar, profile to the original master. And the same if the stamper hasn't been made properly, it won't have the same relationship. So you can actually objectively test it.
Yeah.
But music's subjective, so it's
I got the ears of a Vietnam tank commander. But Curly, you still didn't get us much more information about the compilation album.
Yes.
So I know this is Kathy's passion. So
this is my favorite thing ever. So as we've established, starting Suitcase Records was not the most intelligent decision any of us have ever made. So at some point we want to have fun, and we want to do it for reasons that are not necessarily financially related. One of the great joys we've had over the last year,
which is the whole business,
which is but this is in particular not financially related. One of the great joys that we've had in the last year has been being exposed to this amazing pool of independent artists who are just doing stuff because they love it and they're just doing it. So we came up with this, I thought, pretty simple idea of just doing a compilation. We were just going to talk to a couple of, so we had basically 10 spots, Suitcase Showcase compilation to showcase some of these amazing artists. As everything started off really simple, right? So we'll just do that. But then we thought, we'll just ask some people and see if anybody wants to be in it. But to be fair, we had to ask all the independent artists that we pressed with. And so I sent out an email expecting, 3 replies. We got 48 people wanting to be in it, which is
cool.
Which is fantastic. We can't quite afford to press 5 volumes, and perhaps nobody will buy 5 volumes. So we're running a competition starting from next Monday, where we're letting music fans choose what 10 songs get to go on our compilation.
Oh, it's awesome.
So wait for it.
It's like Ripper 76.
Yeah. So we're gonna have cool female country. We're gonna have punk. We're gonna have metal. We're gonna have folk. Maybe I don't know what we're gonna have.
Who knows yet? That's great.
That's a great idea.
What's even cooler is that the people who vote, as soon as they vote, they'll get access to what we're calling our pre-sale, at which point, if they're prepared to roll the dice and pre-sale without having any clue what the cover looks like, what songs are on it, we're going to do a limited edition of those first movers. Neil's going to do a hand pour for those ones. So they're going to be, it'll be a limited edition for those brave souls who jump in early before they know it. It might be terrible, but it might be great. And whoever's in early gets the early run at it.
That's a comms master stroke and viral content to boot. That's killer.
Yeah.
So well done.
And look, it's kind of, we're doing it no profit. So basically, all the proceeds from the sale, we're going to split 11 ways. So 10 of the 11 shares go to the artists, and 1/11th will go to Support Act, who are, a great organisation.
We know them very well. Fantastic.
So it's something we want to do every year. Just every year, let's do it. Have a bit of fun. What we would really like though is we're trying to work out a way to see if we can get it, for want of a better term, registered with ARIA, and if we can really drive the pre-sale. See if we can get it.
Imagine we could rate on ARIA, Suitcase Showcase. Compliment.
That is unreal. It's not outside the realms of possibility.
No,
it's not.
Because what I was thinking about is years ago when Rage Against the Machine said, they hated Simon Cowell so much, they said, we want Killing in the Name to basically be the number one Christmas song in the UK. And they did it. So I'm thinking, I wonder if we can get, even though, in our house, we've got some very out and proud Taylor Swift fans and some closet Taylor Swift fans.
With that.
It would be great. Imagine if we knocked Taylor Swift out of the Australian vinyl charts.
If only for one brief shining moment.
Taylor Swift comes up on
number
every
10
episode
for
of
30 seconds.
No.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
Look,
And that would make everything worthwhile.
I reckon we're all on board. What can we do to help make this happen? I like this idea.
Can you buy it for 138?
It's going to be really interesting to see how people respond to it. It's a little bit crazy, but that's pretty much the nature of what we do. So it's so it should be good fun. So actually, probably by the time this comes out, I think we'll be past that, but they will be available by that time. We'll potentially know who's going to be on it. We might even know what the cover looks like.
Wow.
It'll be just in time for Christmas.
Yeah. So anyone watching this, go to suitcase.com.au whenever you hear it. And
except our website is suitcaserecords.com.
Oh, what did I say? Oh, yeah, sorry. So suitcaserecords.com.au.
You'll find us.
Yeah, or Google it.
And so do you guys do the packaging and all that sort of stuff yourselves? Like that's all part of the process.
We outsource the printing, but
we coordinate it all.
And we assemble
And
so they already own their artwork. We hand them back a finished record ready to sell.
Right.
One of the hot issues I've had in discussions lately: OB strips, yes or no?
Yes, I love them.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that.
We haven't done a lot. Not a lot of
But I
people
like
them.
them.
They're great.
Yeah.
They look cool, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
you want me to bring this one home?
You need to go. Okay.
No. Yeah, it's
just I just got to do part 3.
Hold your thought, Kathy.
Okay.
Hold it. I'll bring this baby home. In 1869, with the help of fellow telegrapher and mentor Leonard Pope, who let me live in his basement, we founded our own company, working as electrical engineers and inventors. We began developing a multiplex telegraph system which could send 2 messages simultaneously, not unlike the freaking internet in Adelaide at the moment. In 1876, we sold the system to my former employer, Western Union, for $10,000, a great deal of money for the time. It allowed me to set up Menlo Park, an industrial research lab in Middlesex County, New Jersey. From this point, my career went on to bigger and better things, leading to the invention of many household items we now take for granted, least of which was the electric light. But perhaps the invention that gained me the most admiration was the phonograph in 1877. This accomplishment was so unexpected by the public at large as to appear almost magical, like you said before. I became known as the Wizard of Menlo Park. Without me, us 5 dickheads wouldn't be here tonight. I didn't mean to call you guys dickheads, but my name is.
He was
Thomas
30
Edison.
when this happened.
Thomas Edison. Yeah.
He was 30.
Yeah.
What a waste
And
my life has been.
And just self-taught.
Unreal.
No university in there anywhere. I think he might have studied some chemistry somewhere, but
And basically invented the record.
Yeah.
So go. Sorry, Kathy, you were going to finish off what you were saying first, and then I had one more question.
Sure. Oh, no, all I was going to say is you were talking earlier about what are trends and things that you're seeing. One of the things relating to the Obi Strip conversation is what we're seeing is that fans want to engage with the artists, and they want to do it in a way that's unique and limited and special. And Obi Strips is one of the ways to do that. You know, limited edition runs, special Full Flower, so Full Flower Moon Band was a band that we pressed, and they did a original pressing of Black, and then they followed it up with a pressing of Red just for one of their shows, and that went really well because it rewarded the fan for a moment in time. And I think that's the trend of where a lot of vinyl is going. The experience and the connection and the uniqueness, I think, is where it's all at now.
Because last time around, vinyl didn't have that ability for as much customization.
Yeah.
People weren't doing it. They didn't have access to it. And it was a mediated experience. People could only get records out if they signed to someone big.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is great. This is so exciting. I think it is.
So you touched on it before. We're still using plastic to print these things. And I know records before I know you can press it on acetate. Before it was done on Bakelite back in the day. Has anyone come up with anything else that you can?
Yeah, it's moving. So
okay.
So the base compounds now that most record manufacturers, if they're not using, they should be using, have got a lot of the heavy metals removed. So used to lead used to be, lead as a stabilizer, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of stuff. So these days, stabilizers typically are either tin or calcium zinc. Calcium zinc better. Tin's not great, but much better than lead. Less of the nasty chemicals and the lubricants, but you're still dealing with something that's made out of petrochemical. Fossil. So what's been happening is there's been a couple of things. There's been a lot of things tried. And a lot of the compounds sort of up until recently, high aspirations and terrible outcomes, basically have sounded like rubbish and have been incredibly difficult to press.
Right.
It's been there's an organisation in the Netherlands called the Green Vinyl Council, I think they're called. They're trying to develop a compound. It's interesting, the way they're doing it would actually change the way records are made to be injection molded, not pressed like they are now.
Okay.
Which I don't know. I mean, there's so much investment in the base technology in the industry. I'm not sure that people would dump billions of dollars of record presses to change machinery.
Yep.
But there are now some compounds coming on that have made big moves, and basically the moves they're making now are organic-based stabilizers and lubricants, and replacing a lot of the base compound with either biofuels or recycled waste such as vegetable oil, old tires and the like. And those compounds have come a long way. So we actually trialed something just recently, and we basically pressed with our normal compound and then pressed with this compound. 4 of us had stood around, had to listen to it. I'm not sure any of us really could pick a difference. I couldn't, and visually you couldn't pick a difference. So, it's got to happen. In 15 years, we're standing around making records the same way. We're not going to be making records. Yeah. The industry has just simply got to change.
It will, for sure.
Yeah, and it will. And it's partly it's got to be driven by all parts. It's got to be driven by businesses like ours, providing options, pushing options, and that's what we're sort of starting to move towards. Consumers, the listeners have got to start to push for it. Artists have got to push for it. We had a meeting with one of the major labels the other day, and they're really starting to make a lot of noise about it. So it just needs everyone to get on board, and it will get there.
And I think the trick is to not wait for perfection. Let's just keep
that's
iterating,
right.
keep improving it. Let's reduce the bad stuff, increase the good stuff.
Yeah.
Move
Totally
towards where we want to be.
It seems like some of the concepts you're talking about, like I dabbled a little bit in 3D printing and things like that. So some of those sort of extrusions in the plastics, it seems to be a bit of a synchronicity. And there's so much movement in that world. Surely there'd be a lot of whole other industries that are kind of pushing in that same direction.
Look, there are. And interesting, we did a showcase at Queensland Parliament House last week, a manufacturing showcase, which was pretty funny because you had all these people there, like, you know, building the world's best drones and making these amazing kind of, you know, rechargeable batteries. And there's us with our records. Hi.
They'd love you, though. They would love that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, we were the funnest by miles.
Oh, except 2 stalls down, there was someone who was making gin.
Oh,
they seem to be.
Yeah, that's always going to win over.
Runner up, okay.
Yeah. But I was talking to a guy who was much, much smarter than me, a plastics expert, and they do plastics injection. He was saying, why aren't you using this plastic or that plastic? Because it would run better and it'd do this. And I don't know. But all I come back to is industry-wide, if no one's doing it. Well, on one hand, you kind of go, if no one's doing it, there must be a reason. On the other hand, if no one's doing it, maybe it's just because no one's thought of it. I don't know. But I do know part of the big thing is around, there's a couple of things. One is that you've got to be able to get the record off the stamper without the use of any lubricant. And in a lot of injection molding and plastics molding, you use lubricants to release. You do that in records, that lubricant's going to create havoc with the audio.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And the other thing is its ability to stabilize and stay stable. And that's less even so about records warping, which obviously we don't want records warping, but it's more about those little micro bumps and, you know, ridges and whatever within the groove.
The dust you're talking about.
You don't want those slowly over time changing form. So that stability is really critical.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot in it, eh?
Well,
there is.
Thomas Edison to say test and retest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, guys, we've been going for just over 56 minutes.
Awesome.
Time flies when we're so intrigued and interested in a topic. I've had the pleasure of knowing Kathy and Neil now for just over a month, I think, and what I've learned about vinyl is just amazing. So, Kathy and Neil, I'm going to start the wind up. So if people are interested in getting some records pressed for their indie label or their band or what's the process? How can they contact you guys?
So just search for Suitcase Records. It'll come up in Google. I would encourage people to call us. As soon as you get to the website, our phone number is there. Ask questions. We're here to help. No question is too dumb. That's what we're here for. So please call. Tell us what you want and we'll help you get it.
Except we did get asked once if we press a record with someone's ashes in it.
Oh, yeah.
And we said no. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
I've heard those sort of stories before. I always thought they were urban myths.
Can I just say,
wow.
Can I just say, like, the best music's usually made with like love and passion. And so if it goes into the vinyl pressing, I can tell you guys have got both those things for this.
Yeah.
So if it works for that, yeah.
Didn't Alice Cooper do one with some blood?
Yeah.
Of course he did.
Yeah. Of course. I think Kiss tried that too, didn't they? Or just said they did. It was
the Flaming Lips did a liquid fill one with blood from the band.
Yeah, Kiss might have done one, but probably used someone else's blood.
And just one last question, Kathy. Where did the name come from? Suitcase Records.
When we had our old house, before we sold it, and we had musicians come to visit and play gigs, they always used to turn up with a suitcase full of records that they would sell at the gigs. And that's pretty much represents exactly what we wanted to make. And there we are.
That's good too. Yep.
That's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kathy and Neil, it's been a joy having you on the show tonight. For everyone that's listening, if you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Stay tuned and go and follow Suitcase Records. We'll have the link in the show notes. And find out who's on the Suitcase Showcase. I think that is such a fantastic idea And I don't reckon any other record company or record producing company is doing that. So I think it's amazing. Don't forget, wherever you've watched or listened to this, like and follow and leave a review. We love them. We don't get anywhere near enough, but we need more. So we're on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. We've got a website at unfilteredundiscovered.com. We've got our playlist on Spotify. Of course, no music to add tonight because we're talking to the
but eventually we'll have a compilation album to add.
Watch this space.
Yeah, good pickup, Braggy. We'll add that to the playlist. Now,
if it ever ends up on streaming services.
Yeah, if it does.
But you can link from Spotify to your vinyl sales, so it's all good.
So lyrics from the playlist come from a Central Coast band called Anakai, and it's one of our most famous interviews with the young lady. I've forgotten her name now, Braggy, but the one where the internet cut in and out all the time. And the song's called Two Pop, and it's one of the most amazing lyrics I've ever seen in a song. And it's, I found your love in one big hug in the middle of losing my mind. It's on the playlist. Check it out. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you all again, or maybe next week. All right. See you.
See you later.
See ya.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Neil.
Bye.
Well, I drove this road many times before, and I thought about you tonight. Thought about you. And when it's getting late and I falls into gray, would you open up the door and let me stay? Cause I want to just be with you, to pop non-stop.